Trump is hitting Xi with everything he's got, but I don't know if Xi's going to be backing down.
In practically every one of his key industries, China's beating America right now. Electronics, chemicals, machinery, equipment, motor vehicles, basic and fabricated metals. America still has the upper hand when it comes to IT services and pharmaceuticals. Most successful tech companies come from the United States. Tesla, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, all of these guys. And you know, it's important to understand that Google isn't just a search engine and Amazon isn't just an online store. There's so much more to these companies that you do not regularly see. So for example, both Google and Amazon are two of the world's 3 largest cloud providers. Cloud is basically what enables people to go on the internet and store data. If you take their services away, advertisers, entire industries go down because they no longer have access to the data they need on their customers. Google, Amazon, and Microsoft control all this data. Practically, the more global share they have, the more data they have access to, the more data they store. And you've got some competitors in places like China with Alibaba and then Huawei coming up. They're strong too, but they don't have anywhere near the global market share that the US companies have. This is why people like Bezos and Pichai and Nadella, they have awe-inspiringly obtained the title of Tech Titan. Yes, the media presents these people as, you know, oppressive overlords and so on. That's the predominant narrative, and I understand that narrative, I really do. But then there is this other side to them that are masters of the modern world. And titans, do you know what a titan is? A titan is the kind of thing that used to roam the world and do what it wants. Titan's powerful, man. China's destroying America when it comes to many of these sectors. I've spoken about Xi Jinping before. I've told you how much of a baller he is. He's now going to places around the world and he's winning over favors with leaders from places like Vietnam and stuff. He's actually getting Vietnam on side, saying, you know, Trump's the bully, I'm the one with the open markets. Remember, Xi Jinping needs to bring people on board because he's got some, China does have some economic problems right now. Yes, its GDP grew in the second sector by over 5%, but its nominal GDP, okay, when adjusted for inflation, only grew by 3.1, 3.9, something like that. I'll get the statistic up on the screen. So he needs to, you know, export goods. He needs people to buy his products, and you know, that's why he's going up to places in Latin America, in Africa, in Southeast Asia. These countries, these regions are all going to become bigger characters, by the way, in the World Order show. You're going to see the leaders of these countries emerge as key players in the game of power. The ultimate game of power is between America and China, but that doesn't mean there aren't regions like Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, and Europe who are now also playing their roles in the game as almost like the kingmakers rather than the potential king. BRICS is probably the hottest group right now, and yet Xi Jinping isn't even turning up to BRICS. Why isn't he turning up to BRICS? He sent his second in command to the latest meeting. Is it literally he was just too busy? He just misscheduled something. He had that meeting with some guy. Putin must be freaking annoyed, doesn't he? Did Putin even go to BRICS 2025? Because for every time these guys have had a conference since 2022, Putin's been invited through like video call. It's like, yeah, we like you, but you're not actually coming here. It shows you that the West still has influence over these players. Like the question is, has BRICS stopped Putin from coming in person because of Europe's or the Western pressure, or have they stopped because they want to get something out of it themselves? This is the thing with BRICS. Like, how united is BRICS actually? It's nowhere near as cohesive as NATO. NATO is having problems right now. I mean, Trump's put some pressure on them. They've actually stepped up to the pressure. Now many of them are making military commitments. But there is a lot of talk in Europe about how closely Europe wants to align with America, at least economically. Economically speaking, Europe is, I think, going to become a stronger, more and more sovereign state. And then the question then becomes, okay, well then economic strength usually ends up turning into military strength. And once Europe then does that, which looks like one of the trajectories that could happen, well then America's dependence on America becomes negligible. They become officially competing spheres again. I think NATO, as Europe becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, I think NATO will dissolve more and more and more, basically. That's the theory I'm betting my money on right now. I'd put like a £100 bet right now on that being the future trajectory. I'd put more money on that trajectory right now more than any other trajectory. Look, Europe remaining economically weak is temporary. That will pick up within 10 years, I think. Because I think they're realizing that they need to become more independent of America. I think they are. If you look at the policies, all of it points towards that. And I think you're going to see a more independent Europe in the 5 to 10 years to come, at least. And I think eventually that turns into military might. And I would actually be very proud of Europe if that did that, and I'd want Britain to rejoin the EU if they did that, because I think Britain is stronger when it's in Europe than when it's just by itself. The Britain like Nigel Farage likes to talk about is the Britain of the 1800s, when Britain was like an empire. And I get Farage's appeal. I think Farage is actually quite good for national pride. I get that. The problem with that is, in practice, Britain is no longer that country, and it stands a better chance of becoming a serious respected power in Europe, I think. Now, you might look at the world of finance, and even in the world of tech, UK is a very important independent player. So the question then would become, would you be willing to hand over Britain's sovereignty and much of its talent across the rest of Europe? I think we're still the top. That's the thing. Could we have a federal system where Britain still has some of its own laws? What would this united Europe actually look like? Does Britain benefit by having its own rules? Look, maybe this will have to be a conversation for another time, because right now I want to get back to the tech story. But Xi does have a lot of clout with a lot of these BRICS countries. And this is coming in contrast to Trump, who seems to have treated some of these countries quite disrespectfully with the tariffs. The question is, in their perceptions, who do they approve more of, Xi or Trump? Unless they all want an economic crash, they will still have to depend on China and America for certain goods. So the question then becomes, oh, okay, at least temporarily, if they're being pragmatic, then at least temporarily, who do they prefer, Xi or Trump? And look, there are some figures I found which at least shows what people feel towards Trump, or at least what Europeans and Western people feel towards Trump, which has gone down. I imagine Latin America will be very poor because of America's history in Latin America. And, you know, don't just take what I say. I mean, do your own reading, come to your own judgments. That's absolutely fine. I'm just saying, if you value like national sovereignty, America wouldn't score points for what it's done to Latin America, and indeed much of the world, by the way. I'm not sitting here some judgmental type and going, how dare America do that? How dare... No, I understand how this game is played. I'm just saying, if one of your values is national sovereignty and non-interference, then yes, you'd be very frustrated with America. Xi's got the kind of swagger that enables him to go up to ballers and bring them on side. Xi is right now in his like early 2000s 50 Cent period. Do you remember like prime 50 Cent when he was going into the club and then singing about how he was going to the club? Trump isn't backing down though, because Trump's coming out with Xi by going after his machines, right? So Trump's got his boys in the Department of Commerce and other departments going over Chinese AI. They're basically interrogating them and just trying to figure out how they work. And they've done this to what's it called, DeepSeek and Baidu and all these systems. Alibaba's one, and they're just checking for how these things work. They can already detect that the machines aren't telling them about like certain things about Taiwan and Tiananmen Square and all these places, right? The Xinjiang vocational training centers. And this is concerning because on the one hand, China's tech is now as good as America's. You know, truly, we're in an age of the tech race. But on the other hand, China's often criticized for property theft. Many people feeling that China simply copies American tech designs, which I don't know if is necessarily true. I think China does make a lot of innovation, though it's not just quite at America's level generally. When you look at patents, China takes out more patents. But when you look at the quality of patents, quality of chips, quality of research, quality of universities, for example, America's still typically the leader in this, though some would actually even dispute the university one. And plus, China's turning out more engineering and STEM grads than America, and a lot of Western countries as well. That's another thing you got to look at. To put it simply, quantity, China wins. Quality, America currently is winning. This could change very quickly though. America's been blocking China so many times. You remember Biden, right? Biden's coming at China, blocking them from the Netherlands' latest lithography machine, which is what you need to make the highest producing chips. Yes, China produces some of its own chips, but American companies are the ones that produce the state-of-the-art chips, okay? We're talking about Nvidia and AMD, right? So, you know, they're producing the latest chips. This is actually what Trump used when he went to Saudi Arabia and UAE earlier this year. You know, Trump's going to these places in a bid to kind of counter China and grow American tech stacks. And, you know, I'll talk about the tech stacks in a bit. He's made deals with MBS and the leader of UAE, along with Altman and Nadella. Oracle as well is involved, SoftBank's involved. They've got some ballers involved in this meeting. They're going to build a 5 gigawatt factory in the UAE. UAE may be making itself the Silicon Valley of the Middle East. This is a signature sign. This is a statement signing, okay? Yeah, could Trump maybe be doing more back home? Maybe, but it still looks impressive, isn't it? He's the guy who built the center, you know. Biden tried to stop this kind of thing because he categorized UAE and Saudi Arabia as tier 2 countries, which basically meant because they were a bit different from America, they weren't allowed. No, but there are some human rights concerns and so on, justifiably so. But the other argument is no, America was just being arrogant and trying to tell them how to be. Either way, for whichever reason you take, you can understand that Biden didn't want these countries getting this top tier chips. Trump's coming, he's basically done away with that. He's basically allowing Nvidia to sell their highest end chips, the Blackwell chips, to Saudi Arabia and UAE for their own AI systems. Trump doesn't really care whether you're a dictator or not. He just wants to turn a profit. Which is in some ways a strength. I think it's a less condescending attitude, but it's also, some liberals especially will argue that Trump is turning a blind eye to human rights violations. You know, over 1/3 of countries worldwide are now using AI for surveillance, right? And this is a concern, but then I think America's also powerless to stop that. It goes either China sells them the tech that they're going to use for surveillance, or we sell them the tech they're going to use for surveillance. Okay, this is a big difference between Trump and Biden. Biden still, at least on paper, made a case for upholding those values and thus limiting US business for it. Trump doesn't care. It's business first, business, business, business. Sell, sell, sell. It doesn't matter who you sell to as long as you sell. I spoke about tech stacks earlier, and tech stacks are really important because yes, on the most macro civilizational level, you've got America versus China, with all the other middle countries in between. And then on the company level, just below the state, you have the companies enabling Trump and Xi to basically approach different markets. This is the stuff bringing in the revenue, right? And these companies are all basically offering different countries tech stacks, which is like a tech package. You know, like with Amazon, for example, you know, they offer you Prime, but when America offers Amazon to someone, it's basically saying, right, we'll build your cloud infrastructure, right? The tech stacks consist of multiple ingredients: cloud servers, physical servers, undersea cables, of which 99% of the internet flows through, cable towers, satellites. Okay, these are the tech stacks which basically enable countries to have the internet. US and Chinese companies are competing for this market share. They both want to lead in providing tech stacks to countries. There was even some news about some countries allegedly tearing up the undersea cables of other countries to destroy their internet communications, which is why you've seen a bit of a shift towards satellite in recent years. But this is really crucial infrastructure. You know, America is building up its military partly because it wants to defend its tech ecosystem and its tech stacks and what it offers in the tech world. You know, we sell your tech stack and we provide you with the military to defend it if need be as well. You're getting the American subscription deal. It's like Netflix but for countries. Like, that's, America just offers you so much, and if you say no, sure, but you'll fall behind because it's such an innovative culture. America still has some strengths, man. Let's not forget these cowboys who freaking led the way in so many pioneering technologies, man. Microsoft, Apple, man. These are the ballers that America's produced us with. And these are the ballers that will sustain their lead for quite some time, I think. America's still the #1 place for innovation, for dynamism, for capitalism, for those things that, let's be honest, everyone wants to give a go at. Everyone wants to be a baller. Cloud marketplace, GDP compared to Americans, and the euro and the dollar, right? So look, I have a lot of faith in Europe. I actually think Europe could one day be good again. Let's not forget, Europe's the place that's given us some of the biggest ballers that have ever existed. Albert Einstein, Isaac Newton, Winston Churchill. But it needs to turn some things around. Cloud marketplace, Europe's gone down. GDP, you know, 20 years ago, Europe GDP was the same as America's, practically on par with America. This is like just before the financial crash. Europe's economy was on par with America's. Today, it's dwindled. It's practically 2/3 of America's strength. So, you know, Europe needs to up its game. And like, I think Europe can make a comeback. I criticize Europe a lot. It's not because I dislike Europe. I want the best for Europe. So I'm thinking, like, create a hella, like, I don't know, like, I would, look, just putting it out there, I'd make us more like the Americans. Cowboys, dynamic, rock and roll, man. Go-getting. That's what I'd encourage all Europeans to be. It's a cultural shift. And once the culture shifts, everything else will shift. I'm going to end by talking about the dollar and how, you know, the dollar has historically been the one ring to rule them all. It is to America what the ring was to Sauron. Not calling America Sauron, though, you know, you could interpret it that way. If you're talking about a powerful person that needs a powerful item, well then yes, the dollar is to America what the ring was to Sauron, okay? Countries all need, every country in the world needs the dollar, okay? They all revolve around the dollar. They need it to trade with, okay? You know, 2020, early 2000s, 70% of countries use the dollar to trade with, okay? You have to understand that if you don't have a dollar, everyone has to exchange their own currencies. They might not always want one country's currency because then they can't use it to trade with another country. So it's just impractical. It just doesn't work very well. So the US at the end of World War II made everyone just use the dollar, and this gave the United States massive advantages because they can just print as many dollars as they want and basically control the global trading system. It's sick, man. I've got so much respect for how America played the game. It's Triple H in its prime, man. So Trump wants to make sure countries keep the dollar whilst also making it weaker as well. But this is the thing, because BRICS have come in and now they're challenging the dollar. They're starting to trade in their own currencies, and this is really annoying Trump. Guys, the saga continues, man. I will be back next time with another video. If you've enjoyed this video, do give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, subscribe. World Order covers all things geopolitics, macroeconomics, and tech. Guys, thanks again. I'll see you all in the next episode. Bye-bye.